The following presentation sets out to answer the question of what's more dangerous than an untruth alone, with an untruth that's protected as a common sense. Common sense is a formidable opponent, and challenging it can be tough, but researchers at Teesside University don't scare easily. In this presentation, Steph and I plan to take you on a short journey through some Teesside University sociological research that sets out to slay zombies and myth-bust pernicious common senses. Common sense is the comfort food of political rhetoric. It's exploited across party lines, although seemingly is most attractive to those on the right of the political spectrum. It's an appeal to intuition and the reassurance of authenticity, and it's perhaps its total surety that makes it so appealing in uncertain times. When it's adopted in this context of political popularity and ideology, it intentionally excludes social science, and so alongside that, any need for evidence-based research. Common sense is seductive, offering easy shortcuts to knowledge. It makes a direct appeal to emotion, provoking alarm, guilt, pride, love, and hate. It uses and arises from what Berger and Luckman call stocks of knowledge. These are quick shorthands of ingrained habits, customs, myths, and rituals. Bypassing all apparent need for research and evidence, it's the top trump card for those who use it to close down debate. What's presented as a common sense requires no explanation. It answers the question of how do we know this to be true with, we just do. Bourdieu examines this using the concept of Doxa, so identifying what is and what is not open for discussion. Common sense for Bourdieu becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. By defining the parameters of social action, it simultaneously recreates them. Intellectual knowledge and associated academic research can then be claimed to reside in ivory towers, divorced from the reality that those who use common sense understand. Sociology, and the forms of in-depth analysis it uses, is purposely excluded by Doxa. The suspension of disbelief and the search for truth or evidence has no place in common sense. Slater suggests we adopt Proctor's agnotology, which is the theory of the deliberate production of ignorance, to understand the pronouncements of Ian Duncan Smith's right-wing think tank. Using an agnotological framework of analysis, Slater demonstrates that it's possible to see how the Centre for Social Justice intentionally manufactures doubt around the structural causes of poverty. And when it does this, it deliberately gives the impression that welfare is very much an individual lifestyle choice. It's critical that social scientists ensure they interrupt and disrupt such pernicious uses of common sense. It's not easy, as Burawoy states, public sociology is playing with dynamite, and that disturbing common sense can incite vicious attacks, public humiliation, and even death threats. While a psychoanalyst may challenge an individual, a socioanalyst faces the wrath of society. Yet social scientists are compelled to speak loudly on behalf of the voices that common sense appropriates and then shuts out. Sociology is, as Burawoy borrows from Bourdieu, a combat sport. Bacon tells us critical thinking is the solvent of Doxa. It's critical thought that can question the obviousness of such knowledge, and critical thought that can highlight the way the frames of the debate are being constructed. Common sense is packed full of contradiction and paradox. Individuals will often declare entirely contrary viewpoints through it. By being aware of this, it's perhaps possible to seek out Gramsci's notion of the good sense, born of critical philosophy, which lies within common sense. Taking on this challenge to interrupt and disrupt with vigour, pesky kids from the School of Social Science at Teesside University set out to bust myths, slay zombies, and confront some of the nonsenses of common sense. The following presentation includes a few masks we've ripped off, alongside a few caretakers, fairground owners and corrupt officials we're still in the process of tracking down, and some of the superpowers Teesside University's researchers use to hunt out the truth. It is around work, or specifically worklessness, where the moral tone of common sense can often be heard at its loudest. Benefits or welfare are a dominant theme in times of turbo-scroungophobia. These kind of common senses divide people up into a neat binary code. We are the employed or unemployed, as if these are consistent, long-term, static categories. We're among those who are deserving of benefits or those who are most definitely not. Individuals, groups and families are all neatly divided up into strivers and shirkers. This stokes disgust and anger in a division of them and us, and it's about the shameless and the shameful who are definitively judged as less than. This award-winning work, co-authored by Rob MacDonald from here at Teesside University, challenges these binaries. It clearly demonstrates unemployment to be frustratingly cyclical. Low pay and short-term jobs create continuous instability in the lives of those working and trying to work in poor labour markets like Teesside. The book cover here symbolises this futility, with the image of Sisyphus condemned to eternally roll a boulder up a hill, only for it to fall back down again. The latest series of Benefit Street was filmed locally here in Teesside. The original series, along with many other programmes of its ilk on the main broadcast channels, drove energy into the deserving and undeserving poor debate. That these forms of broadcasts will be screened alongside a government committed to following an austerity agenda demands a response from sociology. Research from Teesside University has created its own media storm. This allows the cultivation of a public space where an alternate conversation can be held, one based on valid research and evidence. This particular JRF-funded research, carried out here at Teesside, confronted the frequently repeated generations of worklessness orthodoxy, in particular the 3 generations of families where no one has worked statement, often reiterated by ministers and commentators. This particular research has also had an impact in new media, gaining a significant reach through retweets and blogs that have been shared globally. Just like the Yeti, it's difficult to assert that something doesn't exist simply because we can't find it. And while common sense needs no burden of proof to espouse its truths, social science does. Yet the 3 generations myth did offer particularly strong parameters to establish an expedition. Searching intensely in the place most likely to find proof and uncover the phenomenon, in Glasgow and Teesside, no 3 generations of workless families were found. In fact, less than half of 1% of all workless households in the UK might have 2 generations where no one had had a job. What the researchers did find was people committed to work, who desperately wished for work, and who wanted better for themselves and their children, yet were faced with a barren local labour market. This particular common sense myth that worklessness and welfare dependency is a culture passed down through families frequently returns and resurrects itself. This kind of zombie theory appears almost impossible to kill off. For all the academic, press and social media attention to the debunking, this particular polemic seems to get back up no matter what seems to be thrown at it. It's clear that what we increasingly need to make transparent is the purpose this enigma plays, and importantly, the social scientists must maintain the same zombie resilience as the myth makers do. So my own research is very new, but I wanted to take a moment to share my intentions. At this point, it's more questions that I'm posing rather than answers I'm suggesting, but I think they're important ones. What I hope is that by asking such questions and listening intently to the answers, we may continue to apply solvent to doxic thinking. Uncertainty appears to be escalating, reaching into the lives of families in the UK who maybe felt themselves above and protected from insecurity. This word, precarity, is not yet in the Oxford English Dictionary, although its frequency of use is accelerating. It defines an all-encompassing precariousness of life experience, and for the purposes of my research, I define this as fundamentally related to employment. As the opportunity to obtain secure and stable employment recedes, so does the ability to maintain security and stability over numerous other areas of life. Recent economic changes, which include stagnant real wages, high prices for services and consumables, increasing house prices, and high youth and underemployment rates, all reduce the means available for social reproduction. The Social Mobility and Child Poverty Commission warned in 2015 that young people may be the first in more than a century to fare worse than their parents' generation. This may be particularly so for those in more indeterminate class positions, those who may not identify with either the traditional working or middle classes, those who the Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott was referring to back in 1997 when he claimed that we were all middle class now. So it's these young people and their families' lives that I'll be researching here in Teesside. These are the missing middle, the ordinary young people that are maybe absent from much sociological research which can tend towards extremes. Young people who are neither neat or elite, those who were previously likely to make satisfactory transitions and make little noise as they move through the middle of society. I've chosen to speak to generations of families who live in Ingleby Barwick here on Teesside. Ingleby appears to be known locally by many as a place of aspiration, a word that can notably be heard often by many from the Labour Party as they pick through the bones of their recent defeat. Ingleby was a destination that proved on arrival you'd made it, although maybe not all hold this impression. What you see here is an Ingleby Barwick local councillor tweeting about snow quite innocuously, only to attract this from another professional account. Economists predict that mid-skilled jobs will be increasingly stripped from the labour market, with a growth in what Goes and Manning label lousy jobs and lovely jobs, but are hollowing out of the sort of middling occupations that historically provided a destination for the socially mobile working class. In this context, I'll be asking what continuities and changes in social mobility, socio-economic security and class identity can be observed across generations. I'm interested in whether young people in the missing middle are facing new, expanding trends of marginalisation, maybe even intergenerational lockout, as social commentators such as Hauker and Malik have claimed. I'll be conducting in-depth interviews with different generations within families to seek to understand their hopes, plans, choices and identities. And from this I hope to seek to understand the politics and wider social psychological responses of those who face precarity and declining security. Are they attracted, as standing is concerned they may be, to the politics of inferno, a reconfigured fascism, or to a politics of paradise based on redistribution, fairness and equality? Now I'm going to hand you over to Steph, who'll be taking you on the second half of our journey.
Thanks, Katie. I'm Steph. I'm a medical sociologist based in the Health and Social Care Institute at Teesside University, and my work's funded by the Foundation for the Sociology of Health and Illness. I'm going to talk to you about my research, which is around death, dying and bereavement, and be warned, it's startling, but not for the reasons that you might expect. Within British contemporary society, we like a chat. We will chat about lots of things, the weather providing an unending supply of small talk, but we don't like to talk about one particular part of the life course, the end of life. Or that is what you might believe. I've been carrying out research speaking to people who have provided informal care for a member of their family who has recently passed away. These people are from a range of differing socio-economic backgrounds. I've been conducting in-depth interviews with people and followed them up over the course of a year. There are a whole host of interesting things I've been finding out throughout my fieldwork: the effects of death, dying and bereavement on family dynamics, how or if people know how to access the support they are entitled to, how they process the emotional impact of their loss, and the cultural choices of how to memorialise their loved one. So how can sociology help to explain some of what I'm finding? I will take one concept to shed some light on some of my participants' interactions with healthcare professionals. So what have people told me? Pamela was telling me about a time when her mother had been admitted to hospital and she continued to provide full-time care in the hospital, but struggled to discuss what was going on with doctors and nurses. She said, "I was feeding her, washing her, dressing her. I was doing their job for them. I'm thinking, well, I'm helping you, so surely you can give me 2 minutes. Explain to me." But you can't say that to them, can you? Debbie echoed the sentiment that she found it hard to make healthcare professionals see her and her mother as individuals. It's very personal to you, so you remember everything. I suppose they don't. Joy told me about a time her husband had an important hospital appointment and asked her daughter to come with them. I said to our Kim, "Will you come with me?" She said, "Yes, of course." And she asked him questions, loads of questions, and I don't think I'd have thought of asking, you know what I mean? because my mind was just on him. These different accounts all highlight a divide and disconnect between the patient and carer and the medical setting and the healthcare professionals they encounter. So what can help make sense of this disconnect? It seems to be taken for granted that medicine and healthcare play a vital role in the functioning of our society, but it has not always been this way. In contemporary society, the medical world is powerful. It can decide what is normal and abnormal, healthy and unhealthy, and even dead and alive. But how and why? A definition of medicalisation offered by Gabe is, medicalisation describes a process by which non-medical problems become defined and treated as medical problems, usually in terms of illnesses or disorders. What does this look like in practice? Using our sociological gaze, it has been shown that medicalisation happens at many levels. Firstly, the macro level, where conceptually medical vocabulary is used to define a problem and medical language permeates our discourse. The meso level refers to where at an institutional level organisations adopt a medical approach to treating a problem. This goes wider than hospitals and medical centres to links with welfare services and our employers. And finally, at the micro level, it can be seen to happen in doctor-patient relations and interactions when a problem is defined as medical and medical treatment occurs. But to what end? It has been argued by Zola that medicalisation can be viewed as a form of social control. Health screenings, weight monitoring, keeping track of smoking status is a form of surveillance which can lead to stratification and is affected by the labels that the medical world creates and impose. The professionalisation of the medical world is in the interest of medicine to continue to assure society that it is a simple common sense that it is required. It enhances and ensures their place and dominance. This gives both status and authority, so if you as an individual require a sick note or become disabled, it is doctors that sanction and allow access to the social support available. One more obvious way that the pernicious aspects of medicalisation can be seen is the way in which companies can profit from illness with advances in technology, medicine and pharmaceuticals. There are examples elsewhere with the medicalisation of birth, which is a natural part of the life course which humans and many other species have been doing for a fairly successfully long time, well before the existence of science and medicine. So how does this link to my work? What happens when one of my participants comes face to face with this guy? My participants are frequently from areas and backgrounds of multiple deprivation: economic, health, educational and social. This highlights social class differences which gives a distance between the healthcare professional and the patient. They find themselves entering a system that their background or lifestyle may not be compatible with, and being in a less powerful position are on the receiving end of orders and directions which they may not always understand or feel confident to challenge. This medicalised world does not recognise the experience or expertise of my participants, who have often provided 24-hour care to their family member for many years and have a great deal of knowledge of their individual circumstances. So with a power dynamic so greatly weighed in favour of the healthcare professional, should there not be some attempt to leave judgments at the door and explain the facts and prognosis in a clearest way as possible? However, we must approach these explanations with caution, as medicalisation can often be seen as a dichotomous concept. However, it is not a one-way process, as illnesses and disorders may become demedicalised. For example, homosexuality was not so long ago considered to be a medical abnormality, which thankfully society and the medical world have come to reject this notion. Also, the concept assumes intentionality. The accumulation of power and social control, to what end? Are they all really out to get us like a dystopian novel? Medicalisation as a concept has been charged with having a negative bias. Some works such as Illich and Zola will make you question whether you'd really go to the hospital if you broke a limb. It overlooks the positive effects, such as the eradication of certain diseases, increased life expectancy, and an increase in the quality of life. However, overall, it is a helpful concept to question the control and influence that the medical world has, especially when trying to understand the difficult experiences for some of my participants. How we do what we do. Our methods and ethics. We'd like to think that we have helped to convince you of the power of questioning our assumptions, but how we reach these points is important. I will now tell you about some of the superpowers that Katy referred to that we as social scientists use to get answers. Deciding to undertake research is usually prompted by a question. We need to make sure this question hasn't already been answered. Often understanding the work that has previously been done in the field is essential to taking it further. In light of this, we will design research questions, and it is these that guide our every waking moment. But seriously, they do. What is it that we want to know will directly influence how we propose to do it. Social research has many methods at its disposal and is constantly innovating and changing. Ensuring appropriate methods are used is key. For my research, I used repeat one-to-one in-depth interviews. Katy uses a mix of focus groups and semi-structured interviews. These are underpinned with additional elements or totally alternative approaches, such as using participant observation, photograph elicitation, life grids, surveys, walking interviews. The list is endless. All allow the participant to share their experiences and thoughts in a way that is meaningful for them and allows us ripe data that we can analyse in line with other people's responses. Once we've decided what it is we want to do and how we are going to do it, we cannot just head out into the big wide world and go for it. Here is the part where we must consider a whole range of ethical issues, including informed consent, risk, confidentiality, and anonymity. We subject our proposed work to a board of top-notch academics who will scrutinise, and they really do scrutinise, the proposed research. This is in order to safeguard, first and foremost, the participants that we will come into contact with in our fieldwork, ourselves as researchers, and also uphold the reputation of Teesside University for carrying out high-quality, rigorous research. Once we have gone out and done our research, which comes with lots of challenges along the way, we simply have to analyse the results, write up what we did and what we found out, and how it links to previous research in the field, and then send it off to academic journals to be accepted and published, and also to academic conferences where we stand and talk about it. Simple. Then, if you're a good researcher, you will find other meaningful ways to share your findings with those in the real world who can hopefully take it forward into making policy changes, challenging mistruths, and using it as a platform of solid peer-reviewed evidence to rethink the assumed common sense notions that underpin our lives. We hope to have taken you on a journey of new perspectives and understanding, from showing how common sense can be exploited to wield power and authority, to showing how we as sociologists go out into the world and get research done. The quality of the work done here at Teesside University is something we are proud of, and we hope that this presentation will have helped challenge your preconceptions and pushed you out of the comfort zone of common sense. We'd like to encourage you to leave this presentation feeling motivated to go and commit sociology.